this week we are going to be talking about one of the most awaited films since I think 2019, Gangubai Kathiawadi. And here we have Amartya for his second podcast with us. And we have
Hi.
two new joinees, Sanjeet and Dhruv
Hello.
from Queen is
Hello.
Dead podcast.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that name, by the way. Very interesting. Before I get into what I liked about the film, I would like to open the floor and ask you guys. So, Amartya, tell me what is something that you liked about it.
I think I liked what almost each and every one of the general populace who has seen the movie like Alia Bhatt. She's phenomenal. It's both her most showy performance, like performance, but
Mhm.
also it's like she's proving the naysayers wrong in a way. She managed to show a different facet. And by that, she gave us a character who might not be, who might not reveal the real person, might not resemble the real person, but she did emulate the characteristics which I think Bhansali wanted to portray. And she did it pretty effortlessly. Whatever the flaws of the movie, she wasn't the flaw. She was the glue. She held the movie together. She elevated it to what it is.
Yeah, that's really well put that she wasn't the flaw in the film. In fact, she did elevate it, and she was, I think, in almost every frame. So
Yeah.
for me, I couldn't take my eyes off of her. Not just for the superficial aspect, but for her performance as well. I was glued to the film only because of Alia. Dhruv, I want to come to you. What is it that you liked about the film?
Her performance, like I think all of us will have that in common. It's just I've always been her fan. I think I guess Student of the Year didn't like introduce her properly, I guess, to me.
Highway
But
did it.
Yeah.
Highway, I think for most people did, and I'm not the biggest Highway fan. Just to put that out, I really like her performance in Udta Punjab. Is still probably my favorite performance of hers.
I
But
think she was great in Razi. She was great in
Razi, I think she's good in. I think she has, but I think the one problem, I guess, I'll get to the problem later. To be honest, let's just get the positives out.
Yeah,
So she's,
yeah.
so I think she's fantastic at playing the Gangu character. Like she has three personalities in the film. I think Ganga, Gangu, and Gangubai. And I think at for playing the first two personalities, she's phenomenal. I think where she's slightly vulnerable, slightly sort of, she has that shrill, almost excitable
Naive.
voice in the first. Yeah, in the first section, and then after that, there's that transformation where she has to become this slightly. So she's at the edge of being a woman in power and a woman who's still very young and doesn't know how to sort of work her way through Kathiawadi's sort of brothel scene there. So I think that sort of initial section, I think she's incredible in, and I think the music, which is too less, I think in the film, like there's too few songs, which is. But whenever it's there, I think that provides like some of the best moments. The love story, the small love story between her and Afshan, I think that's his name.
Yeah.
That character, that's one of the parts of the film that really stuck out to me as like being memorable. Overall, my big positives, I think I'm slightly less positive on it than Amartya and Sanjeet both are. So
I have a feeling you're probably going to say some of the same things that I have in mind in terms of the negatives. But before we move to that, Sanjeev.
I fairly liked it. I mean, with Sanjay Leela Bhansali, there's always this operatic quality that comes along with it. And for a very long time, I didn't like him that much as a filmmaker until very recently, when I just realized there's a lot more to him than just the over the top drama that is going on and everything that is. I mean, that's not a criticism in any way, but there's also this old world charm in it, which I really liked amongst all the other positives mentioned. I think with Alia Bhatt, I think so at this moment, I feel there are only a few filmmakers who get this kind of pitch in Hindi cinema, which is like slightly over the top, which I think only Sanjay Leela Bhansali amongst a very few section of filmmakers do this at the moment. I think Rohit Shetty is another. But most of the filmmakers have adopted a very different style of filmmaking, which doesn't really let you perform at that kind of pitch, which really was prevalent until probably like 10 years back or something. So I think this is more like a litmus test, because I think the other kind of acting is people have gotten used to it. So performing this kind of acting and being committed to this kind of character is a bigger ask than the other kind of films.
Sanjeet, can I just, the performance that she gave that didn't work for me that much before, and this is why I was like skeptical about this, was Kalank. I know the film itself isn't very strong, but Yeah, the
We have
film
all
itself.
forgotten about it.
I know, but as a fan of Alia Bhatt, I was very much disappointed in her performance,
Disappointed.
because otherwise she brings something to a role, even though the film itself is pretty bad.
Yeah, Kalank was more or less like an aping of a Sanjay Leela Bhansali aesthetic, which failed miserably, I think, because I think that film didn't have that coherence which like a Sanjay
Which
Leela
this also
Sanjay Leela
doesn't have.
Bhansali.
But
I mean,
Yeah.
so
It
this
has
is what I really
it
like.
did not have a lot of things. Coherence is the least of its problems.
I think because it was centered around this one character, there was this more fleshing out of the character which didn't exist in Padmavat. Although Padmavat was about this one character and the drama around the character, it wasn't that good. And this one at least does better than the previous film, I feel. So this is something that I really liked. Also, some of the dance, although the music is almost not existent, like how Dhruv said, some of the sequences were fantastic. There was this two performances that had so much energy, and even the camera work was like fantastic. So those were like the really good moment building performances, and like Sanjay Leela Bhansali doing his magic.
I actually want to just piggyback right on a few things that all of you have said, which were also the positives that I felt. I won't get into the performance because I think all of us are on the same page that she has really outdone herself. Apart from that, Sanjeet, what you just said about the cinematography and even the choreography and stuff. Definitely the two Gujarati songs, which was one Dolida and one basically when the younger Alia Bhatt is dancing, were all just one take shots, right?
Yeah.
That was, I think only a Sanjay Leela Bhansali can pull this off in today's day and age, or maybe Farah Khan, but Farah Khan is obviously a little more mainstream and upbeat and stuff like that. So I was completely mesmerized while watching all of that. And not just the dancing ones, even the car ride between...
Even that was, I think, a single take, if I'm not wrong.
That was a single shot.
That's fantastic. That's the best take I have seen in that.
Same here. I think, and one of the things that I realized is, again, I think only a Sanjay Leela Bhansali in today's day and age can do this, is have their actors emote with just their expressions, no dialogues, nothing, no actions even, no loud actions. I mean, the fact that they're only communicating by throwing cards at each other, or they're communicating by gesturing in the car ride.
The fact that silent comedy, basically, and Persian.
That's the whole old school charm that was there, which was like nobody does it anymore.
Nobody does it anymore, and I think only he can do it. I think that was the only scene where I didn't see Alia Bhatt. I saw Gangubai because she went through the whole roller coaster of emotions within seconds. And that was the only point, which is also the flaw in the film that I felt like even though her performance was so powerful, I was still watching Alia Bhatt. I was not watching Gangubai. I guess this is a good segue into the negatives of the film. I will start, Dhruv, with you because I feel like you have a lot to say on that.
Cinema cynics.
Yes.
No, it's not
we
being
are both
cynical.
bracing ourselves.
I rewatched Savaria just after watching Gangubai. So just saying, I'm not the cynic. I like Savaria. So I actually liked it. So I'm not the cynic, just to make it very clear.
I think the word we are looking for is contrarian, but okay, that works. Anyway.
Okay, fine. Anyways, I think this second half of the film is genuinely bad. Like, I don't think there's very much getting away from the fact that it's a very poorly written and it has no momentum for me. Scenes happen, they move on. Scenes happen, they move on. Characters come, characters vanish.
There are no stakes.
Yeah, but the worst thing about that is I think that they set it up so making you expect that there will be a whole half of stakes with the Vijay Ras character.
And then it is just explained in another scene.
The Vijay Ras character scene at the Irani cafe, that's the midpoint, right?
Yes,
that's the intermission point.
Okay. And I think that sort of second half really threw me off. I mean, I also have problems with the first half, but I think the second half is the point where I was like, this is a repetition of something he did with Padmavat, and Bajirao Mastani also never worked for me that much. So it's just all the characters become kind of cardboard, and like everyone. And I know he's not going for complicated or complex emotions, but for a Sanjay Leela Bhansali film to work, I think it has to evoke emotion in me, and I felt nothing.
Same here.
I felt absolutely nothing except for the moment of the car scene you've mentioned, or like the the climax of the film is so anticlimactic. I was just like waiting for the at least
Big.
Sanjay Leela Bhansali climax is generally Padmavat, even with
Yeah.
all its problems and the problematic elements of its conclusion.
Hmm.
You get the sequence is fantastically directed. I
That
think.
conclusion is breathtaking. That
Yeah,
Padmavat's
yeah, yeah.
conclusion is breathtaking.
I mean,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
known
yeah.
for this,
Insane.
right? Devdas, even Savariyari was, even that has a very
Even
good.
Bajirao, I think. I remember the
Bajirao
ending.
also, yeah.
The climax
Oh
was
yeah,
going
that
much
shot.
better.
Yeah, that shot. That
Yeah, I think it just gets lost. Like it's what Sanjeet had mentioned to me in a text. Like it has all the biography or like biographical
Yeah.
film problem.
what I liked about Padmavat is exactly what I disliked about this movie. It's like Padmavat had a point, Padmavat had something of an aim. Khilji was the main character in Padmavat. Khilji's entire motivation was that he wants Padmini. He wants to attain her by any means necessary. Whatever be the problematic scenario, that was the aim of the entire. This movie is the biopic. It's the traditional biopic structure with all the highlight reels intact. That Vijay Das segment, the intermission left you on a high. I was expecting something, Both of them with the speech, both of them have. It's that entire dialogue bazi, that 70s filmmaking, that entire dialogue bazi they have. They're building it up, they're hyping it up to something big. And then it fizzles out because the story itself just says what the result is within the next sentence in a sentence of dialogue.
Basically, it was like chapters in a film, right? This is one chapter, chapter 2, chapter 3. So
I think
completely agree
one of
with
the
both
bigger
of you.
issues. Yeah, I think one of the bigger issues, I think Nidhi, you mentioned in it. I think it was based on one chapter of a book, right? Mafia Queens of Mumbai. It was based on one chapter. So material itself isn't there.
But can I interrupt? I was just saying that there's a point in the first half which happens so early on. I was thinking that'll be the intermission point.
Which
like
one?
Like it's a transformation. Like she becomes Ganga after one night, and I'm like,
after one night.
Isn't this supposed to be longer? Like I was waiting for this
Isn't
to happen
it?
at
Is
the
it the
interval point.
Lala? Is it the Lala intimidation scene where Lala, dashes the guy's head? Anyway,
No.
No, just before that.
Even before that.
You know, when she's applying makeup, just like very roughly applying powder, and then immediately she gets not immediately, then it's her first night where she's calling the customers, gets the first customer, and then overnight she feels like ab main Ganga nahi, main Gangu hoon. What happened? Why the sudden
that
evolution?
part got compressed, I think, in the edit. It really feels like that.
That's
I think there was much more to
I
it.
had as well. Yeah.
I think there was a scene there in the middle. Something on the
I think
for sure.
I think the burden of that lies then on Alia Bhatt's shoulder to make that transformation happen. I mean, she's having to do double the work because the script is not allowing her enough room.
To her credit, it worked though. To her credit,
it did.
It worked.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, but the second half.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm saying what Sanjeet you said. I feel like they probably did have scenes to show the evolution and the transition, but it probably got edited out, which again goes back to the fact that it's unfair to just assume that the audience should A, understand it, B, agree with it.
If you see the last couple of Sanjay Leela Bhansali movies, let's say the last decade itself, his second half problems have always existed in more or less the same fashion. Even with Ram Leela, Bajirao Mastani.
How many of these has he written though himself? He's not.
No, I think he's a writer here, but I don't think he wrote the other three.
The historical epics aren't written by him.
Not written by him, but I'm saying the second half problems have still existed in terms of in a sense of like pacing, and like the whole film just sags in the second half, more or less in the last three films that I've seen.
Yeah,
which almost happens here as well. And to add to that, it becomes like a hagiographical biopic problems. I think things that we didn't like in other biopics that we've seen, like in the last 1 year or something.
Pick the one we always name picks.
Name. Come on.
I mean, Shersha, for example. I think, it has all the biopic problems added to.
Sorry, which one? I didn't hear that.
Shersha.
Acha. Okay, go on.
I mean, it has all the biopic problems, adding to the whole second half problems which Sanjay Leela Bhansali films have all the time. Plus, I think it lacked a very central anti-character, which was, I thought Vijay Raja's character would be like the Dhankorba, who I really liked in Ram Leela. I think he had a similar character in Bajirao Mastani as well. Forgot the actress's name, but she was bald in the film.
Tanvi Azmi.
Tanvi Azmi. Yeah,
yeah.
the character by Tanvi Azmi. So I mean, there was a lot like those type of characters did exist before, and here it was almost like I thought Vijay Raj is going to be the person doing
Yeah.
it, but it almost like comes in a flash and goes. So it was like lack of certain
In the first half,
personalities
there
which-
is though that one focus, I think, with Seema
Seema
Pava's
Pava,
character.
exactly.
And you got, thank you for getting me to that, because I know Seema Pava is a fan favorite and I really love her, but I honestly thought she was a little miscast here. I
Really?
kept
Caricaturish in a way, right?
I think not
Caricaturish in a
miscast,
way,
but
right?
the
I thought-
characterization didn't work. I think.
I thought she is too funny, and there was no menace to her
Mhm.
character for me. I kept on getting reminded of Supriya Pathak in Ram Leela, and I find her fairly terrifying in that.
Yeah.
Which is what I kept on thinking over. I know that Seema Pava is a fan favorite, and I know everyone loves her. I do too, but I honestly felt her performance was a little off. But then I was not. Apart from Alia Bhatt's performance, majorly none of them work for me. Ajay Devgan I find boring in these
I think
films.
Indira Verma, who played, I think,
Kamli.
her friend
Kamli,
Kamli. I think she was
she was
brilliant.
good. Yeah,
She was
Brilliant.
very good.
I don't
yeah.
mind.
She was
Ajay
very.
Devgn.
Yeah, I didn't mind Ajay Devgan. Honestly, I think Ajay Devgan's presence actually hampered the
Ajay
movie in a
Devgan
way.
was playing Ajay Devgan.
He's so
Yeah,
boring
yeah.
in these movies.
And
I
it's
don't know.
fine. And it's fine. He can play Ajay Devgan for as long as he wants. That's not the point. My
Yeah.
point is his presence itself hampered the movie because his presence brought a menace, right? Like that entire violent scene
Yeah.
with
I
all
think Ajay Devgan was also
that
like a wild card. Like
yeah.
any problem, just throw like a cheat code and that's there.
Okay, I want to come back to Sanjay Leela Bhansali, and I think all of
Mhm.
you have also mentioned his previous works. I'll be very honest with you. I stopped liking his films, I think, sometime around Ram Leela,
Mhm.
because I found them too templatized. I found them over the top, where more
Mhm.
attention was given to all the technicalities, but the story and the narrative and all of that. And I feel like I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, but I did not like Padmavat at all. It
Oh,
did nothing for
Mostly
me.
nobody did.
Most, I don't
actually.
think lots of people like
Hey,
it.
I
Because
liked it.
anyone,
Come on, what's the most
Mostly
Most
doesn't
most
count.
people who are not cynical
Mostly
didn't
nobody.
like it.
I felt
Uh,
absolutely nothing. Like, I mean, my Sanjay Leela Bansali films would be
Hum
Hum
Dil
Dil Le
Chuke
Chuke
Hum Ji
Sanam,
Sanam.
Khamoshi. Khamoshi is like one of my favorite
Favorites.
films.
Yeah, yeah.
And
beautiful,
Mine too.
then
beautiful movie.
even Black for that matter. But
Yeah, yeah.
I think Ram Leela onwards, all I see is him trying to push an agenda of sorts, or just trying to,
Mhm.
play with his creative and inspirational mindset and motivation, rather than actually giving the audience that heavy, like power packed stories. And I felt the same with Gangubai. And the only saving
Mhm.
grace for Gangubai was Alia. And I think Alia's fans who are like standing by her, because as I said before we started recording, I think Sanjay Leela Bhansali did Alia dirty by
Yeah.
not giving her that power packed
Yeah.
script. What do you think about Sanjay Leela Bhansali as a filmmaker in 2022?
I think Gangubai reminded me that, Bhansali is doing a form of movie making we don't really see nowadays. In that regard, I'm always going to appreciate it. Even if the opulence isn't here in that level, it really isn't. It's still mellowed down Bhansali in a way. That operatic quality, the way he shoots the dance sequences, like, this is just me saying, I'm not a musical fan, but I know for a fact that if you're going to shoot a musical, being operatic, being fluid, being dynamic with your camera work is the primary thing you need to do, because your audience needs to be completely glued to the screen. Otherwise,
Yeah, yeah.
otherwise their attention span will go away just like that. And I think Gangubai's dance sequences, as little as they are, those music sequences, they are fantastic.
Yeah.
The score is fantastic. So it's like you can, whatever be the problems with the script and the screenplay, I genuinely think that the music itself and Alia's performance is what saves this movie from what it is. But yeah, it's very much mid-tier Bhansali. And
What is top tier Bansali? I want to know this. Like I'm
Guzarish.
pretty much
Guzarish.
That's what
Guzarish, oh,
Bhansali
I love
fans.
Guzarish.
That's what
Mhm.
hardcore Bhansali fans don't like, though. They say that's too watered down.
Then Black.
Okay.
I didn't like him that much earlier on, like until I watched Guzarish. I think I watched it around 2011 or something. It came out in 2010. And until then, I watched Black. I thought Black was good, and at that time, I didn't even have that sense of cinema at that point. But then I never revered him as like a filmmaker or something until very recently. But when I watched Guzarish, I thought that was a really good movie. At least it had like a really like core soul to it than most of his films. And when I checked about the film, I read about the film, what was said back in 2010, people had hated on it like anything, I think. Cut to, I think, after Ram Leela, cut to Ram Leela, the last three films, Baji Mastani and Padmavat, which I think is a trilogy of sorts in the last 10 years that he's made. I think his focus has shifted more from the stories to the scale and the canvas. Earlier, the canvas and the stories sort of like,
they were aligned.
Yeah, sort of like they did match each other, but Guzarish for some reason had like huge sets, which I didn't really understand the reason for it, but then that's just aesthetic of his choice. But if you look at like his earlier first, I think 3 films, which is
Khamoshi,
Hamdil Chuke Sanam and Devdas, I think that's top tier stuff, and nobody has made their first 3 films as good as that. That's, I think, a filmography. The first 3 films, I think people would like kill for to have like a filmography like that. So all of this is just looking back at that and realizing all of that was good, and realizing how good of a director he is, of understanding the rhythm, like how Amartya also said, the rhythmic pattern, the fluidity and everything of framing, and then as well the story going forward. I think if you still watch Baji Ramasani, the first 20 minutes are fantastic. I still feel that. It's again the middle section which fails, and then the end which I think redeemed for me was like the poetic ending. So I think Sanjay Leela Bhansali is a bloody good director, but I think there are some aspects to his filmmaking which have kind of degraded, especially with Padmavat massively. Which I don't know. I can't say anything about him because he's like much huge now. And he's making some series with Netflix for like, I don't know.
What? Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know this.
All I know is got paid 35 crores for it. So I mean,
good for him.
Who am I to say anything?
Nice.
So yeah, I think that's a series about quotations in some I think Lucknowi Gharana or something like that. Which
he's good with those Gharana style.
Exactly. Stories, right? Also, if you see the last 3 films, they are more periodic than his other films.
Yeah.
I mean,
which also is like a very good hack. I mean, I think he's using
it I think Rustic
for his own
world aesthetics. Rustic would be the better term.
I mean, I'm just saying he used them as like a hack for his world aesthetics.
Yeah.
This one too, he's like just gone overblown with. I thought he was a little overblown with it, but it still works. At least the world aesthetics for me.
Because Kamathipura sure didn't look like that, but it's like
I mean there's a Kamathipura of Muton, and then there's a Kamathipura
of this. I think this and Savaria in a way. This and Savaria, I think aesthetically, I think both are spiritual cousins, right? I think
no. Savaria is absolutely full blown. Like it's a set. You can tell it's a set.
It's a set.
I think here also you can tell it's a set.
Gangubai also say it's a set.
But in that there's like blues and like it's turquoise basically. The whole film is turquoise, and like then there's like flashes of green, blue, and like everywhere. So it's much more of a SLB film, I guess, in like capital letters. But I think I like. So there were some sequences in this actually which we didn't talk about. I think there's the first sequence where she enters and she realizes she's in the brothel, which I think is really well shot. Like it's like she enters a haunted house and one door closes, the other door closes, and then the light bulb
that is good.
That's a very good sequence. Then I thought there's one sequence, and I wanted more of this, was with the camaraderie with the other people in the brothel. I thought there was less there, but there's one sequence where she starts reading a letter, and all of the sisters around her start. They completed, and I thought that was very moving. So like those, I wanted more of those touches, I think.
To summarize that bit, I felt the same thing, that the film was played out in those very delicate, specific moments. And only in those moments, it touched me and it connected with me, and then boom, on to the next problem.
Basically,
Yeah. Sorry, can you tell me about the other moments that you thought were fantastically done?
So there was the second half had a couple of moments which I thought did Alia Bhatt the most disservice. And these are the ones where I was a bit angry just because I was like, you can't can't like diminish a performance like that. And because she's giving a lot in that scene, she's talking to her mother on the phone, and in that stage she is going from Gangubai to Ganga to Gangu, all three. And the camera is zooming in on her, but before and after that there is no build up to the scene. It's just happening in isolation. And I was like, what is this? Like, why am I not feeling anything in this scene which is so emotionally charged? And those are the moments where I really felt disappointed, because I think that was the point of like doing disservice to the sort of actor there. And as a, I don't know, like as a director as a whole, I've never, again, like Sanjeet, I've never been a crazy Bhansali fan. Though I watched Savaria today, and I was like, maybe he should just work with like other fictional scripts, maybe, or like for like fiction based scripts. So Savaria is based on Dostoevsky's which I didn't know it was. And Devdas is of course classic literature. So you get all the sort of these stories, or go away from history. That's what I wanted to that's what my thing was with Bajirao, and this at least Padmavat, where I was like, the history is the big problem with his film sometimes.
I think SLV is thinking like history itself is so much opulent, I don't really have to think too much about the world building, because the world building itself is opulent enough.
Yeah.
But his films aren't even historically correct. He does take those creative liberties to add and subtract a lot of things that can also be questionable. So in that respect, why not just write fiction when you when you are such a creative individual, right? Then why rely on these stories?
There's no point in making anything radical in any, like not making anything overtly radical in India in any case. We saw what happened to Padmavat.
Exactly.
That was an absolute disaster, right? So I'm surprised this hasn't faced a lot of flack. I'm sure it has. I don't know what the
No, it has. No, I think it has, but I think it has because of another different reason entirely. I think it has because of the apparent simplicity by which it is handling the main topic.
It's
she's a saint, right? She's a saint. Even though the film says she's not a saint, she is a saint. So
because you don't become a mafia queen by just being nice. I'm sorry, that's not how it works.
That is actually, and I agree, I haven't seen it getting a lot of flack, and I'm actually very happy about that, because I watched it at a screening, and when we actually came out, we were discussing the film, and some of my peers were saying, oh, it's going to get a lot of flack for, communal jihad and everything. And I'm like, really? I didn't see that, like love jihad and stuff. I honestly didn't see that, but I was like, okay, I'm sure there must be some very jobless people out there who will pick up on that and create an issue on that. But I'm glad that has not been picked up yet.
Justice for jobless people.
I'm sure there's.
Guy, what are you talking?
I'm sure there's a lot to come in terms of discourse. But
you think so?
Yeah, I mean, it's people are. There's more than enough jobless people. That doesn't include the sensible ones like Amartya.
Thank you.
Let's try and wrap this up. So we'll start with Amartya, you. In one sentence, very crisply, if you had to summarize your takeaway from the film, and what would you rate it between a 1 and a 5, 5 being the highest?
I think I only said it. I don't think I can top myself at this point. It's like, mid-tier Bhansali film, top-tier Alia Bhatt performance. It's a 3. Yeah, it's a 3. Out of 5, it's a 3.
Alia Bhatt is blockbuster. Is that the only thing I have to say? And I went half low, so it's 2.5 out of 5.
Could have been a really good biopic, like the gold standard for me. The biopic is like Bhumika by Shyam Benegal. Could have been that, but misses the mark by like way too much. So 3 on 5.
For me, I think it was an absolute cinematic painting. Very nicely, visually, very beautifully shown. It could have been grander, given the fact that if it had a stronger setup and a stronger script. Not a flawless film, but for me, for Alia Bhatt, I absolutely enjoyed it, and it was a 3 out of 5 for me.